Welcome everybody to the Codebreaker 101 session. We're so excited that you're joining us this evening, and we've got some really great things lined up. We'll be talking to a lot of interesting people, and I hope you'll all really enjoy it. Firstly, my name's Chloe. I'm based in the Lake District in the UK. I've been a Codebreaker for about 6 months, so I'll be hosting this session alongside Marlene, who I'll just pass you over to briefly, if she wants to just introduce herself.
Hi. My name is Marlene Oliveira. I'm from Portugal, and I'm a codebreaker and a contributor to Pact with Potential.
Thank you, Marlene. We have an amazing group of fellow codebreakers in our panel for this session, and we're going to go through and introduce them all very shortly. This session is being recorded, and that recording will be available afterwards. So I'm just going to quickly run through how this is going to work. The session will be split. So for the first section, it'll be a conversation between us, the West Yorkshire Archive Service, and our panel of codebreakers. And then the second portion will be a Q&A. So please do submit your questions to the team by posting them in the chat throughout the session, and then we'll get to as many as we can at the end. So yeah, keep posting as we go. So firstly, we're really excited to be joined again by Dan Sudran from the West Yorkshire Archive Service. So Dan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us tonight. I just wondered if you could just tell us briefly what your role is at the West Yorkshire Archives to start.
Yes, yeah, hello everybody. Yeah, I'm Dan Sudran. I'm the archivist at the Calderdale office of the West Yorkshire Archive Service, where we hold the diaries of Anne Lister as part of the Lister family and estate collection. And I'm also leading the Anne Lister diary transcription project that we're running at the moment.
Thank you, Sue. As I understand it, this isn't the first time there's been a project to make Anne's diaries more accessible to people. Can you tell us about any previous attempts that have been made to transcribe the diaries?
Yes, that's right. There have been other attempts. It'd be kind of remiss not to start by mentioning the extracts of the diaries that John Lister, the last Lister to live at Shibden Hall, produced for the local newspapers in the 1880s and 1890s, which included information of local historical interest from the plain hand writing in Anne's diaries. And also John and his friend Arthur Burrell were the first to crack the code in Anne's diaries. But the kind of key extensive previous transcriptions to be aware of are the published books by kind of Helena Whitbread and Jill Lidington. We've included a bit of a biography of some of those key books on the Reading Anne's Diaries page of our online exhibition. So if you want to kind of find out a few of the names of those books and the periods that they cover, that would be a good place to check. Helena was the first to publish extensive transcripts of the diaries, and the books Helena and Jill have written have done a huge amount to make Anne's diaries readable and are a really valuable resource, as they include both the plain hand and the crypt hand, Anne's code. They've got extensive transcripts and allow readers to get to know and follow Anne's story over an extended period of time. They are very extensive for the years that they cover, but the thing to be aware of with those is that they are edited and selected transcripts. So I guess the key difference to our project is that we're looking to produce complete transcripts of every page and every word of Anne's diaries. But those books by Helena and Jill are really the kind of the key kind of early attempts at producing major transcripts of Anne's diaries.
So how did this current transcription project get started?
Yeah, we've kind of known for many years in the archive service the importance of Anne's diaries, and known from other records how transcriptions can open up records for research and for reading. So this was something that we had in mind as a potential project for a long time. Particularly after we were successful in getting the diaries inscribed on the UNESCO UK Memory of the World Register in 2011 for their cultural significance. But really with the sheer length of the diaries at around 5 million words, and with the complexity of the diaries, it was not something we'd really been able to start ourselves before. The the interest and awareness of Anne had gradually increased over the years until the Gentleman Jack series, of course, and the drama hugely increased awareness of Anne and developed an incredible fan base for Anne, with the drama airing on BBC and HBO, which obviously made it a global fan base too. In the archives, we had a social media campaign while the drama was airing, and it became clear how big the interest had become. And we'd created an online Anne Lister exhibition, and the response to that was great. The campaign was when the drama was on the BBC, but the response was not just from within the UK. And that interest made it clear that if we wanted to launch a volunteer-based transcription project, at the time was right, with so many people interested in Anne and her amazing diaries. I had looked at other approaches for producing transcripts, including the automated approaches using optical character recognition, but the complexity of the diaries, with Anne's huge use of abbreviations and of course a code with no word breaks, meant that really wasn't feasible. But of course, the other aspect which drew us towards the volunteer-based approach was the sheer and fantastic interaction that it would allow us and the amazing code breakers to have with Anne and with her diaries. And we had been able to create high quality digital images of Anne's diaries as a result of funding from Sally Wainwright in her links with the Wellcome Trust Screenwriters Fellowship, which meant that anyone could read the diaries for themselves on our online catalogue. And that was another kind of key aspect to allow us to launch a project now rather than earlier, and in a way that could be joined by anyone regardless of where they were geographically, and that was obviously important to us. So I created the transcription project webpage on our Anne Lister exhibition to launch the project to coincide with the last episode of the drama on BBC, and put out details on our social media, and the response was very quick. And since then, it's grown to more than 160 individuals around the world who have been actively involved, and with their enthusiasm and dedication to telling Anne's story, which is a fantastic response and really kind of beyond what I initially hoped for. So, a big thank you to them all. And the project was launched with the aim to create complete transcripts of Anne Lister's diaries, which will be made freely available on our online catalogue. And the project aims to increase accessibility and engage that enthusiastic audience of Anne Lister fans, and really to extend the impact of Anne's diaries to a worldwide audience.
Nice, thank you. I was going to ask if somebody watches this session and hopefully feels at the end quite inspired to maybe give it a go, maybe they didn't find it, I don't know, they were worried about starting or thinking they wouldn't be able to do it. Do you have any like suggestions what their first steps should be? Have you got any advice from them if they're just kind of starting out and want to know more?
Yes, yeah, thank you for asking that, because we've as I say, we've got the 160 individuals who are already actively involved, and with their enthusiasm and dedication. But we are, there's still lots left to do within the diary, so we are still welcoming new volunteers to the project. To help people get involved, we have a transcription project page on our online Anne Lister exhibition. And if I can just share that for a moment with you, that should now come up. The project page gives details about the project so people can see what it's about and see whether they would like to join the project team. There's transcription guidelines on there, and there's also a test page for new volunteers to have a go at. And really the test page is for two main reasons. It allows the people to have a go and just decide whether it takes their interest and whether they'd like to get involved. it allows them to have a go and see what the diaries look like. It also allows us at the archives to have kind of a quick look at a piece of their transcription work. So hopefully we can offer a few pointers and answer questions that they might have. So once they've done that test page, if they'd like to continue, we can send out a batch of pages for them to have a look at and transcribe. And we're sending batches so people can follow a little bit of Anne's stories over a few days, and also so we can work through the diaries in a systematic approach. But also one thing I'd really recommend is that we've also created a Twitter hashtag, the hashtag Anne Lister Codebreaker, to allow volunteers to post on social media, and hopefully new volunteers will find that really useful and enjoyable to get involved with the brilliant Codebreaker community which they've developed themselves on there. And I know you're talking to some of the Codebreakers in a moment, and it's great to have the opportunity to hear them speak, and also to say a really big thank you to them and to the other Codebreakers that are listening, because we really couldn't do this project without you. So thank you to everybody. But yeah, I would recommend anybody who's interested to have a look at that online exhibition and the project page, and have a go at that sample page, and once they're doing that, get in contact with us, and hopefully we can give a few pointers and ask a few, answer a few questions as well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dan. We'll be continuing our conversation with you throughout the session, so nobody go anywhere. But we're going to just move on to a discussion with our panel of Codebreakers. So thank you all again for joining us this evening. If we just go around and maybe let you guys introduce yourselves, maybe tell us your name, where you're based, and how long you've been at Codebreaker for. I'll just kind of go around the panel if that's okay. So I'll start with Amanda, please.
Hello, my name is Amanda Price. I'm an analyst at Codebreaker, and I've been part of the project since February 2020 this year. I've done a couple of batches, and I love it. It's great.
Thank you. Moving on to Steph, please.
Sure. I am coming up on about a year since I started transcribing, and I am located in the United States. I've done about, I think, 250 pages so far, so.
Wow. Can I go to Jane though, please?
I just started in June. When the project began, I was very aware of it. From the time of watching Gentleman Jack and being utterly blown away by it and having it change my life, I really wanted to be involved. At the time, I was taking care of my elderly mother. And I also do other things, believe it or not. I've left them all behind now. But so I held off for a good while because I was afraid I would be obsessed with it. And then I finally couldn't stand it any longer, and I joined. And I am obsessed with it, and it's all I do. It's all I want to do. When I send a batch off to Dan, I'm very impatient until I get the next one. And I've done about 125 pages at this point, and my only regret is that I didn't join sooner. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I'm enjoying it so much. So it's a privilege to be a part of the team.
Thanks, Jane. Over to you, David.
Oh, I'm David Hughes. I'm from Blackburn in Lancashire. So I can say that, can I, Dan? That's allowed, is it? Yeah, I checked. I submitted my first batch in July last year. So I must have been one of the first in on this. Yeah, that's me. I've got the most to say, really.
Thank you. And can I go to Jessica, please? Are you able to unmute yourself? There you go.
Yeah, I've just done it. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm based in Lancaster in the UK, and I've been a Codebreaker since April of this year, and I'm just about to submit my first batch.
Exciting. And last but not least, Lisa, please.
Hello, yeah, I'm Lisa, and I have been a Codebreaker for approximately 3 weeks. So I'm a bit late to the party, but anyway, I'm very glad I'm here. And I actually approached Dan in August 2019, And here we are a year later, and I'm just starting. So many reasons for that, but I'm really glad. It's brilliant. Yeah, like the other said, it's best thing ever.
Well, welcome to the fold. So excellent. Something that's always fascinated me is how we all got here. So I wondered if I could ask you all how you first became aware of the diary project. So I'm kind of going to go around in the same order, if that's all right. So can I start with Amanda, please?
Starting with me, okay. I obviously watched Gentleman Jack and absolutely loved it. And I immediately went onto social media and started looking for anything Anne Lister related, anything Gentleman Jack related. And I did come across the Transcription project, but immediately thought there's just no way that I can be involved in something like this. There's no way that I would have the skills to be able to do it. I took a peek at what the diary pages looked like and just noped out of it, like, no way, I can't read that, there's no way. But I was so enthusiastic about Anne Lister, and I read all of the books available, all the material possible, apart from the diary, and I thought, well, that's all that's left, I'm going to have to get stuck in. So I just signed myself up, and I've been doing it since then, and I absolutely love it.
Awesome. Steph?
Really similar to Amanda, actually. So I also was watching Gentleman Jack, and during the show, I was ordering, every book I could get my hands on and going through about a book a week. By the time the series had ended, was done with books, starting to read academic papers. And so when the transcription project was announced, I was like, oh no, like Amanda said, the diaries are like basically the only thing left, is like, I'm going to end up going to the source. I didn't think I would have time for it. I also looked at a page just to be like, well, could I do this? Also noped out of it. But then eventually I had started just looking up specific references, like little short lines that I'd want to find the context for or something in a page. And so I started kind of getting familiar with dipping into a random page here or there, trying to kind of figure my way around things. And I ended up dressing up as Anne Lister for Halloween last year, which is how I know that I am coming up on my 1-year anniversary. And I had printed out some pages as part of my prop. And so then after the weekend was over, going around to parties was done, I had these pages sitting in my living room, and I was like, well, let me print off, the margin sheet or the symbol, the Oliver code, basically, that the archives provides for everybody. I was like, let me see if I can go through these and how long it might actually take me to figure it out. And it was much longer than I expected, but once you started, it was kind of addicting. And then it was just like, I was gone.
I can relate to that. What about you, Jane?
Very much the same. When I watched Gentleman Jack, Anne Lister has inhabited me, it changed my life. It had a dramatic effect on me. People who know me think it's the only thing I ever think about or talk about or do. And it probably is. I've become absolutely, nothing in my life compares to the level of obsession that I have for Anne Lister. And like Steph, I read everything I could put my hands on. I thought about it all the time. I've started a massive art project that has been in progress now for me since January and probably won't be finished till next January. And it's difficult to explain the dramatic impact this has had on me and the reasons for it. But the more I read Helena's books, Jill's books, and now the journals themselves, I keep seeing my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own experiences through Anne Lister's eyes. And it just has, I can't even explain the emotional effect it has on me. This project has become so important to me. I almost don't want anybody else to join it because I'm afraid it'll end someday. So
I don't know what we're all going to do when it ends, like.
No idea.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I was aware, sorry, clear my throat. I was aware of Anne Lister. She was mentioned when I did my history degree in the mid-2000s. And there is a passing reference in Amanda Vickery's The Gentleman's Daughter book, which I would recommend if you're interested in late 18th century, 19th century women's diaries in the North. It's a book worth looking for. And then I was involved in another transcription project, which I began in the spring of 2016, which was coming to its end last year. And by something or other, I saw the tweet, which was appealing for transcribers. So I responded. And now I continue on, I keep doing it, but I've got another transcription project for another journal, which is more locally based, which I'm doing for Blackburn Library at the moment. So it appealed to me because I had awareness of her, and also because I'm enjoying doing transcription projects and researching around, which I'm not doing as much with Anne Lister. Okay.
Excellent, thank you. And Jessica?
Yeah, just a very similar kind of experience. So started with Gentleman Jack, and because we're fairly local, we're able to go to Shipton Hall, and I joined all the Facebook groups, which I've never done before for anything else. And like Steph, I wanted to be able to, it was the code that really drew me in and got my attention. I wanted to be able to read little passages and things on merch and things like that. So I had a look at the sheet on the website of the transcription project and sort of had a go myself. And then I think October last year, I started the test page, and on and off had a go, and everybody was so encouraging and reassuring, and I think that's what really kind of got me over the line in terms of actually submitting it. I don't know whether it was the fear of kind of like I might get rejected or I might get something wrong that was sort of preventing me from doing it sooner. But yeah, since then it's been amazing, and I just wish I'd done it sooner. Because it's an amazing community, and I think that's what makes the difference, is that everybody's really, really helpful.
Awesome. And Lisa?
Hi, yes, very similar again. Couldn't sort of, once Gentleman Jack had been on, and I just started to research and do, I read anything could. And I was doing that, and I happened onto the archive services pages, and I was just going through all of those, soaking it all up, and then I saw the project. So I mean, obviously it has taken me a year to get around to it, but I've sort of done various sort of bits and bobs as well in between, and I kept going back to it, and sort of like just been working full time throughout. So it's been a bit of a sort of like struggle to get to there, but that's sort of the same way. I mean, it was Gentleman Jack, and I just, once I started just to explore a bit about her life and about her, and it was for me, it was sort of like, where have you been all my life? Like literally, I just don't know what was before. It's like before Anne and after Anne. It's like, yeah. So yeah, basically that's me.
Thank you, guys. One thing that seems to vary from person to person is everyone's transcribing process. So I wanted to ask, like, what programs or tools do you use to transcribe? What's your setup? Like, how do you work? I'm going to go to Marlene. I think you're going to screen share for us now, I think, hopefully.
That's right. Let me
Thank
just
you.
show you how I do this thing. Okay. So it should be coming up. All right, can you see my process?
Yep, we got it,
okay.
Yep.
So I basically use split screen approach, in which half of it is my page, my current page, and the other half is my Word document. And then I basically just read and type at the same time in a process that sometimes goes faster, sometimes goes slower, but I usually do a first pass through the page, and I get everything I can get from it. And then on the second pass, when I'm proofreading, I just add missing words and stuff like that. So it makes things easier for me, because there's no expectation of doing everything at the same time. So I can speed run a batch in a week or so if I go on my normal pace. If I am going too fast, it might be, well, faster.
Thank you. And then we're going to come to you, Jessica. I think we're going to swap the screenshot over.
Okay.
Oh, Marlene, you're still muted at the moment. Sorry, we're just getting that slide sent over.
There we go.
Okay, can you see it, Jessica?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So my process is very similar, except I've been doing it split screen, just slightly differently. So mine's a vertical split rather than the horizontal. So I created a template document from the outset that I start each page in, and it's kind of got the formatting and the basic setup based on the guidelines from the archive service. And then, like Marlene, I go through a first attempt, get as much down as I can. I tend to, where there's gaps, kind of leave them highlighted. So in the Word document, I'll highlight in yellow just to keep kind of, so I can go back to them easier. And then what I will do is I will probably sleep on it. It's always good to go back to it with a fresh pair of eyes. Quite often you can find that after doing a 2-page spread, you'll go back to like something right at the beginning and it'll make more sense, or you've seen a word written out in full that she'd abbreviated somewhere else and things like that. So I'll have a second go, and if at that point I'm like, no, that's really, I'm not getting that at all, what I'll do is I'll use the snipping tool and I'll take a snip of the page itself and I'll pop that on the Transcribers Facebook group. And hopefully, more often than not, relatively quickly as well, actually. It's amazing. I'm sure some people must just sit on there waiting. Everyone's really helpful. Tell you kind of like, yeah, it's this person, or oh, it's this word, or, and even like sometimes just things that you might have sort of misread, or it's just amazing kind of to get that reassurance and that extra kind of helping hand from some of the other transcribers. And then I'm very much kind of, I like to have a page completely done before I move on to the next one. So I will kind of try and have that proofread and finished before I move on to the next one, and that helps with the blogging as well, which I know we're going to probably come back to a little bit later on. And then where I'm at the moment with my first batch is that I'm doing just one final proofread, just because you learn so much even just by doing a handful of pages, just to go back and check that if there's something like that you might have missed first time around. And that's it. That's pretty much my process.
Thank you. And then we're going to just go to Jane now, if we can just switch that slide over as well.
Is it switched?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I don't use a split screen. What I do is, I download the page from the archive service website, and I open it in a photo editing program I have. It's called ArcSoft Photo Studio. And the reason I do that is because if it's one of those days when Anne is running out of ink or something, and it's, it looks a little light or whatever, I can enhance the image in that photo program. I can add, I can add saturation or auto enhance it until I can see it better. And then I cut and paste using that program's cut and paste feature to, I take about 10 lines at a time and I paste them into my template document that I've prepared, kind of like Jessica was saying. And then I go ahead and, 10 lines at a time, I'll put the whole thing into that template document sequentially, and then I'll start transcribing them. And as I get one section done, I'll delete that little part. And as somebody else said too, when I come to something that's got me stumped, I usually put in a line of question marks and highlight it in yellow so I can come back to it. And I'll make a snip of that one particular section and just plug it in to a white space above the mystery words. And I'll keep coming back and looking at that. Now, I've given you an example here. You can see it turned out to be sister from Market Wheaton, but it looks like Dister from Mount Wright, don't it? So I started, going crazy trying to look for words. I'm Googling words that start with DIST, I'm getting nowhere. I can't find a Mount Wright anywhere in England. It's ridiculous. And I discovered early on in this process that there's nothing like letting it incubate. Go away from it, leave it alone. Miraculously, the next day, all of a sudden, you know what it says. I can't explain it, except that I guess context seeps in and your mind continues to work on it while you're sleeping. But instantly, when I looked at it the second day, Sister from Market Wheaton jumped out at me, and I was only sorry I bothered looking for words that start with DIST at all. But that's my basic process. It's working pretty well for me, and I find I can do it pretty quickly. At first, it was like deciphering, the riddle of the Sphinx or trying to read the entrails of goats or something. But at one point early on, there was a turning point where all of a sudden Anne's handwriting started making sense to me. I could tell what she was actually writing. And from that point on, it really has been much easier. She's remarkably consistent. She abbreviates the same thing the same way a million times. And you get to where you can even read the word extract at some point. It does get a lot easier.
Thank you. It's really interesting to see how we do it all slightly differently to get to the same place. So that's really, really useful. Thank you. If people are watching this and they're a little bit overwhelmed by these big, sections of plain hand, because I know when I first looked at it, I was like, I have no idea what any of this says. Do you have any tips or hacks for anybody to make code breaking a little bit easier? Steph, do you have anything you can impart, any wisdom?
I think, are you talking about the plain hand or the crypt hand? Because I feel like they're completely different.
Separate.
How you pick them up.
Whatever you found, what did you find harder when you first started?
Definitely the plain hand. So the crypt hand came sooner, and even though that took a little bit of time to go back and reference, the symbols, like which letter, which character substitution each was stood for, eventually that just kind of becomes memorized in your brain, and you can kind of just start to read things or take it character by character at least and speed that along. The plain hand definitely took a little bit more work to figure out abbreviations, but like Jane mentioned, Anne was pretty consistent with a lot of the abbreviations she used. And even if it's a word that you've never seen before abbreviated, because of her consistency, you can kind of figure out what that word might have been or what letters she would have omitted from that based on her other patterns with the plain hand. And then, as we've already said, if all else fails, there's this great community that you can lean on by using the hashtag on Twitter or jumping in the Facebook group, and people are willing to help. But then also context too. So if you see a word that you can't quite figure out, but she's walking around in Paris, like maybe you start Googling street names in that area or things like that, or pulling up, like Jane mentioned, a dictionary. What words start with these three letters that I could be missing the rest of? Those kinds of things.
Thank you. What about you, David? Is there anything you can, any tips you've got?
Right. I'll unmute myself to start with. It's really just doing it, to getting familiar with a plain hand. It is just transcribing it, because you do become familiar, as Jane has said, you become familiar with her abbreviations, though you can get confused when she uses the same abbreviation for different words. That is always one that throws you. As Steph has said, if she's in Paris or she's in Russia, you're looking at maps, you're looking at other references to try and, in Russia, it's trying to work out people's names. So I try and put a spelling of that into Google and see what it comes up with, for place names, for people's names. Mm-hmm. The two things I do use, one, Will Be Home 21, is certainly in England, is if you've got a library ticket, is access to the Oxford English Dictionary online, which is always very handy. and also it's, let me just check what it's called. It's I would choose one without the name on it. I think it's there's a dialect dictionary, which is I think it's called Wright's dialect dictionary, which is available through Internet Archive, and that is useful because occasionally she does use a vernacular. So it's handy to use that one. That's one I've used in other transcriptions and one I've used with Anne. So for those people in the United Kingdom, the Oxford English Dictionary is available if you've got a library card, and the Internet Archive for the dialect dictionary, which I'm sure we can let people know about later through tweets or whatever methods. So I know I've done it in the past and people have used it. Okay.
Thank you. This one might split the group a little bit. What's your first thought when you see a coded passage on your page? I'll head to you, Amanda.
Yeah, so the first batch that I had was actually in Paris 1824 and had a load of code, and it was sort of a baptism of fire because it was a really good way of learning the code sort of straight away. And I got really excited because I thought, oh great, there's going to be some good stuff. I knew that was around the time that she had met Maria Barlow. I thought this is going to be really good, and it was interesting. But then in my second batch, again, I got quite a bit of code, and I learned in that batch that it's not always exciting. Quite often it's bowel movements, which is great, and just sort of more mundane things like she records, you know, having her clothing altered or money matters or just random bits of dull gossip that she's picked up from somewhere, and you just think, well, really, did you need to code that? But yeah, so I know a little bit with experience. You sort of know to expect it's either going to be really, really, really good or kind of gross or just a bit boring, and you're sort of like, well, why did you feel the need to put that in code? But it's fascinating to know, to sort of understand what her motivations were for using code in the first place, and you sort of see her use it over a broad spectrum of different reasons. So yeah, I used to get excited initially, and now I'm a little bit more cautious.
What about you, Lisa?
I'm still excited because
I hope we haven't ruined it for you now.
yeah, thanks for that. No, I'm just, what I think is sort of, I just sort of think, well, yeah, I'm so excited. What have you got for me now? It's kind of like, yeah, what's it going to be? So, I mean, I opened my first page that I got a couple of weeks ago from Dan, and the first one was nearly a whole page of code, and I was just like, yes. A, because it's easier, and B, just because I just love finding out what it is. I haven't had anything gross yet or any bowel movements, but I really, really want one. You know, I just want it. I want all the bits. I'm sure when I've done, you know, some more pages and things, I'll be
it's inevitable. It's coming your way. It's inevitable.
I'll be a bit more like you guys and a bit sort of like, oh, it's not always
I do feel cheated that I've not had a mention of, well, I had my first mention of bowels in my last lot, and it was Anne's and Walker's, not
yeah, I really liked the code. I still not quite, you know, fast enough yet with the plain hand, but I am on page 1, so I'll get there.
You're doing good. And quickly, Jessica, we're already like whizzing through time, but yeah, what about you?
Not really much more to add other than, yeah, bowels. It took about half a batch to get my first mention of bowels. It was rather exciting. And I think I tend to talk to Anne more in the coded passages. You can be like, what are you doing now? And I'm in 1826 with Maria Barlow, so you can imagine what kind of things she's been getting up to. So yeah, I'm still at that excited stage when we get a bit of code.
Excellent. So thinking about how far you take it in terms of extra research when you're transcribing, do you tend to do background research on like people or places or events mentioned in the pages that you're doing at the time? I'll come to Amanda again actually for this one.
Yeah, I try to, because I think someone already had said earlier that researching can really give you a context of what's going on, and that really helps you be able to understand what she might be talking about, especially if you come across abbreviations that you just do not understand. If you then go away and sort of Google what's going on, or look up somewhere to find out what was happening at that time. For example, in my first batch, I had 1824, like I said, and one of the French kings had died just that year, and she had talked about watching the royal funeral procession go by, but I couldn't read the name of the king because she had written it so poorly. So I had to go and Google it and find out, and then that led down a whole like rabbit warren of research, and I ended up looking at the French royal family, and I was like, what, hang on, you were transcribing, go back to that. So yeah, it adds a lot of context, and it can really help you understand sort of what's going on in the pages that you're looking at.
Thank you. And David, do you do any extra background research?
I tend to try not to get distracted too much. I do, as I said before, when she mentions something, and it's to check the spellings, or, you know, as I said, when she's in Russia, her Russian spellings are notorious, aren't they, Marlene? She can spell the same name 3 different ways on the same page, but it's to try and find out who these people are, and inevitably you do find things do come up that she's meeting people of interest, let's say, and it gives you the impression of what sort of society she's managed to get herself into. How this small landowner from West Yorkshire managed to become to get it within the aristocracy of Moscow, and similarly when she's in Tbilisi as well, she through introduction she's mixing with people who are far above her rank in society, though she wouldn't let on, would she? So yes, I do tend to get distracted sometimes, but I try not to get too distracted, because as I've said before, this is not my major project. I've got something else which I'm doing, which is going to take more of my time.
Sounds really interesting. We're really running out of time, but I'm going to just quickly sneak another one in before we go over to the next section of our session. As we all know that Anne was fluent in multiple languages, how do you tackle content that's written in languages that you don't speak? Can I come to you, Steph, for that one?
Sure. I think kind of similar to what we've been talking about already, looking up people's names or things like that, or some context around those areas, like or if it's place names, things like that. Other languages also I found useful. There are some, like if she's writing, if I can recognize the letters are maybe Greek, but I have no idea how to read that. Some of the links that have been shared in the Facebook group, for example, are links to like a Greek keyboard. And then you can kind of at least have a go at it yourself and take a look and see if you can pick out what each symbol, her handwriting, is supposed to be. You know, run that through a translator, see if it makes sense. And if it doesn't, then, you know, reach out to some friends that you know that from the Codebreaker community that speak Russian or French, or that can read Greek and have been helping people with those kinds of things. So a lot of Googling and a lot of trial and error, trying to figure it out yourself. And then, you know, as always, kind of asking for help.
Thank you. Thanks so much, all of you, for all your really interesting insights. I'm really sorry that we're running out of time already. I think this session should have been 3 times as long, because this is too much fun. So we'll hopefully be able to come back to you with a Q&A in a little bit. But I'm going to pass you over to Marlene now. So yeah, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Chloe. We are going back to Dan's segment. Okay, so we'll move on to the process after we send our batches to the West Yorkshire Archive Service. So then, can you tell us how many people get the same set of pages?
Yes, yeah, I just must say that was really interesting hearing you all. Thank you for that. That was brilliant. Yeah, how many, as you say, how many pages, how many people get the same pages? Each page is sent out to 2 transcribers, so we're really able to compare them side by side once they're complete. That allows us to see where they're the same, which is really an impressively large amount at a time, and where there are slight differences, which we can check against the original diaries. And we're assigning the pages to keep a systematic approach, to the progress through each page. So that usually means that any page will probably be assigned to 2 volunteers at around about the same time as well.
Okay, which brings us to the next question we have for you. How do you handle the checks of submitted transcripts?
Yeah, the key to that really is that comparison of the 2 completed transcripts. It's possible to use the computer to compare them and to highlight differences that we can then focus on those differences rather than kind of needing to kind of read through the 2 documents, really carefully to spot them manually. Where the 2 transcripts match, we're able to kind of quickly accept that those are correct transcripts, and where they're flagged up kind of differences, we can focus on those. These are often often slight differences, perhaps in how a name has been recorded or simple corrections. For others, they can be compared to the original images to decide what the final version should say. I have to say that the accuracy of the return document has been great, and where there are differences which need checking, the transcribers often kind of highlighted them themselves using square brackets, so we can actually kind of spot those quite easily. Once a final draft of an individual transcript has been created from the 2 versions, the next step is to make the final versions for them being ready to make available online. And there will be 2 versions of the completed transcripts. The version that the volunteers amongst you will be very used to, that's the version which includes all of the square brackets to show the extended abbreviations and the italics to show the text which has been translated from the code. And the aim of this transcript, although we've had to make certain kind of style decisions, the most obvious being the use of square brackets to extend the abbreviations and the use of the italics to show where we've translated the code rather than leaving it in its coded format. The aim of the transcript is to show as closely as possible the text as it appears in the diaries. And this version will be available as a PDF attached to our online catalogue for each complete volume. So the PDF will cover the entire volume.
Okay.
The second version is a keyword searchable version, which will be kind of embedded into the entries on our online catalogue for each page. And the main difference for that version is that we'll remove the square brackets for the abbreviations, which means it can do keyword searches. So this should be really helpful for research and analysis of the diaries by being able to search for key topics, place names, names of individuals. And as I say, these will be in the individual pages of our online catalogue. So the catalogue search function can be used for that. It's a pretty intensive approach, but we hope it will allow a high level of accuracy as well as usability. And the project obviously is going to be ongoing for some time, so there will be ongoing editing of the transcripts until the completion of the project.
All right, thanks then. Let's move on to the future of the project. I have a few questions about the current stats. Do you have any graphic you can show us?
Yes, yeah, and as I said, in terms of the numbers of volunteers, we're at say kind of 160 individuals who've been actively involved. We've also actually had a college group in the United States who have, as a group, transcribed a section of the diaries for their module coursework. So the response in terms of the number of people has been really fantastic, and so thank you to you all that have been involved. If I just again share my screen. Right, hopefully that should have come up. We've got the kind of the most up-to-date stats graphic from the project page, and as you can see, we've got the estimated 5 million words from Anne's diaries, and it really is incredible how much she wrote. These are over some kind of 7,700 diary entries, or nearly kind of 4,300 digital images as double pages, and you can see the progress in the next figures, which is brilliant. With the incredible kind of support of the code breakers, we really have progressed much faster than I'd hoped when we were kind of planning the project. We've sent out about 85% of the pages to volunteers to transcribe. And as I say, these go to 2 volunteers for each page. We've received back about 48% of those pages from both of the volunteers. We've previously estimated about 16,000 to 20,000 volunteer hours are needed for this transcription stage of the project. So it really is, a huge project. Once we have both of those versions back, we're able to check and compare them, and we've checked 10% of those pages so far. Earlier this month, a lot of you will be aware that we launched on our online catalogue the first completed diary transcripts, and these are the early pages, the loose items to exercise, the loose items to exercise diaries, and the first proper volume, which together cover 1806 to January 1818. The figure obviously is small by comparison to the other figures, but as I said, this progress is really beyond what I'd initially hoped for a project expected to run for a few years to completion. The figure of 4% actually equates to about 171,000 words of Anne's diaries, which are now available to read as in full as transcripts on our online catalogue. These stats figures are on our project webpage, and I'll continue to update them as we progress further. But obviously those are the ones, kind of the up-to-date ones as they stand now.
Okay, thanks. This is fascinating. I confess that when I started, I thought this was going to take a while, but once you are in the midst of it, it's very hard to stop. So I totally get how we get to these numbers. It's fantastic. So what's next in the project's life cycle? Do you have any future challenges you're anticipating?
Yeah, we've discussed a bit about the checking of the transcriptions when they come back to us, and really that's the next stage of the project. At the moment, we've made an initial start on that. However, we've had to leave gaps where we don't have the transcriptions back, or maybe we haven't got we've only got one copy back. And of course, the focus at the moment continues to be assigning pages to the volunteers to you, and that does take some time and organisation in that stage. Along with the checking the transcripts is making the final transcripts themselves available on our online catalogue. As with the assigning of pages to volunteers, we're looking at a systematic approach to this. We have been able to make the very earliest transcripts available already, and the intention is to continue from there chronologically. Certainly we will want to release full diaries at a time, as this should make them easier to use and more understandable as people use them. As well as being able to see what's available more easily if we're looking at full volumes. So yes, the next stage is that checking and making available of the transcripts on our online catalogue, which are really quite a huge task to undertake in their own right. And on the transcription side, there is also the potential, once the diaries are complete, to look again at Anne's travel journals, which many of you will already be aware of, to look again at that as a potential extension of the project.
Okay, thanks. So basically, you covered our last question, which would be if these transcripts would be available to the public, and you said it would be through the catalog. Okay,
that's right. Yes, yeah, they will be. Yeah, they'll be there publicly available and freely available. So yeah, anyone will be able to get onto them and see them. That's right.
Awesome, fantastic. So I personally, I can't wait to read more of diaries, either by reading the page or the transcript, whatever comes first. But okay, so we are now getting to our Q&A part of the session. So I'm going to look at some questions we covered, collected during the session. And let's start with this one from Livia, who is running our tech side of this session. What does a volunteer hour represent? An average number of pages transcribed?
It's yeah, that calculation was a really difficult one. It was actually one that we put together when we were applying for the volunteer award, and we kind of tried to get a few members of staff had been doing some transcriptions, and we tried to kind of get a little bit of an idea how long we thought each page was kind of taking, and really kind of calculated that up really in terms of how many pages there were to do, and kind of what we estimated was a period of time to undertake it, and we were probably aired fairly kind of cautious on that time, but it still ended up being showing how huge a task it is as a volunteer project.
Thanks. So this one is another one for you, Dan, because this one I trust anyone else might have come across pages with this characteristic. This is from Suzanne Piotrowski, and she asks, I have some pages from 1831 that have wrong page numbers. Part is written in ink, the other with a pencil, as it seems. Were these written by Anne or others?
Not entirely clear, to be honest. As we know, kind of Anne goes through and puts her page numbers in there. It's quite possible it is Anne, but yeah, it is also kind of equally possible that it's somebody else. I would tend to think it was probably Anne that was doing it. Yes, there were a few occasions where you do see that, where she just I say she, it could have been somebody else, but she kind of goes back and just corrects herself in either by crossing out one of the numbers or writing it again afterwards. Yeah.
I have a follow-up. This one is my personal curiosity. I've come across pages that have Anne's handwriting with her ink, and then crossed with a ball pen, and then it's a completely different thing. Someone wrote. Were those some sort of archival thing, or sort of done by someone else handling the diary?
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to see the exact examples. I mean, I've seen ones where we've got the Anne's handwriting, and someone has gone out the side and kind of made a few notes, and I think that's somebody having a go at trying to break the code. So it's possible that it's John and Arthur. It's equally possible it's somebody else later. Other people were kind of allowed to kind of look at the diaries and use them.
For Maureen, I've seen similar pages where the number at the top of the page has been changed and it looks like biro, so it's modern.
Right. Yeah. If it's biro, then it's it won't be Anne in that case. Certainly seen plenty where it's pencil, but yeah. I mean, these are the kind of things where obviously the project is bringing up things, and we're learning so much about the diaries as we go along. Yeah, there's so many pages that haven't come to light in that kind of level of detail before, which is really where the value of the transcription project and the work that you guys are doing to transcribe them really does show how much we can learn from the diaries.
All right, thank you. So this next one is for our panel of code breakers. It's from Elizabeth Versace. What would you say is your typical weekly time commitment to decoding? So who wants to go up? Because mine is a bit obscene, so.
I'll go for the low end here. It was probably a couple of hours a day. When that's the objective, but doesn't always get there.
David. Jessica, go ahead.
I would probably, most weeks, probably do that a week. I like to do a little bit more if I can, but certainly given that we've been working from home for 6 months, I've found that staring at a screen all day and then having to then stare at a screen even more hasn't been great. So I tend to try and stick to weekends where I haven't been at work. But yeah, so I'd like to give a lot more time than I already do, but I'm only able to do, I think my eyes might go a bit cross-eyed if I spent any more time staring at a screen than I do already.
All right, Lisa, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, yeah, a bit the same, really. I would love to be doing more. I'd love to be doing it, well, basically as a job. But yeah, I'm sort of doing most of it at weekends at the minute, and when I can in the week. But the same as Jess, I'm on a screen all day. So I have actually, I've been doing the printing out just to give my eyes a rest from the screen. So I've just been blowing the pages up and writing in across along the top of each line as well, and that just gives my eyes a bit of a break. But yeah, I mostly weekends at the minute.
Understandable. Jane, you have your hand raised. Can
Yes,
you go ahead?
just to say, I'm not famous for my self-control. Let's just get that on the table. But when I get into some part of this that really grabs me, and you know, you can't wait to see what's going to happen, all bets are off. I mean, I can start sometimes as early as 4:30 in the morning and just, except when I'm forced to do something else, just keep on doing it, because what else could be as engaging? I'm not good at making myself stop when I should. There are other things in my life, believe it or not, but I can really get into it and not want to stop at all. So.
Understandable. I'm at the end of the diary and I was getting close to the last lines and I'm like, don't die, just write more. But well, then she dies. So that's a bummer. But well, we still have the travel journals and lots of letters. So there's more.
Oh, you're muted, Molly. You mute
Next
yourself.
question from Patricia Book to our panel of Codebreakers. What are the best resources and techniques and tools used as you transcribe? Anyone wants to go ahead on this one?
Could you repeat the question? I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry. Best resources and techniques / tools used as you transcribe.
I think some of the excellent resources that are available are, well, the West Yorkshire Archive Service does provide, like, they have a glossary of names. I know Packed with Potential also has a people tracker that has names in it. The Calderdale Companion is also useful for looking up some of those details, whether that's names of people or maybe who would have been at a house that she mentions, things like that.
All right.
Just to add to that as well, there is a document that lists all of the symbols that Anne uses in her diaries, so that you can understand what they reference and what they mean as well, and that's very useful.
Okay, so this one is from Irene Trotta, and she says, "I'm an Italian codebreaker, and I wonder if you have some advice / tips and tricks for volunteers whose first language isn't English." So I suppose this one might be for me. Well, let's say that sometimes the languages you learn in school help a lot. I mean, I did like 5 years of French, and that came in handy. So the English is something I use every single day. I can touch a little bit of German, like the very, very basics, and Spanish, because it's close to Portuguese. But when she goes to Russian, I have to ask for help, because there's absolutely no way I can understand Russian, because she's learning from sometimes other languages. For example, she started to learn Russian from Swedish. So that's a weird mix. And I had the pleasure of also doing some Swedish. So in those cases, I just give in and say, help me, because I'm lost, I'm hopeless in weird languages that she mangles beyond recognition. So
something I would add to that also, which are also great resources that I kind of left out, are the books that have already been written about Anne. Even if English isn't your first language, becoming familiar with the people and places in her life and the words that she uses will definitely help. So if you need to kind of cover some of that background before you start working on code breaking, that can be really useful. Even for people that do speak English, like for me, it's learning, you know, British terms, or specifically 19th century British terms and places. So I think that those can be resources that are helpful for everybody.
Right. Let's see. Okay, so this one just came up on chat from Natalie Hangate, and she asks, are there code breakers for specific languages? Are there individuals who are solely used solely for specific sections? I suppose this one is more directed to Dan.
Yeah, and as also clearly we're talking about there, you know, there are as well as the, you know, the English and the code, there are details recorded as she travels. She often tries to record bits, you know, and learn a little bit of the language of where she is. So that obviously adds to the complexity of some of those aspects. At the moment, they tend to be kind of you know, sent out as kind of part of the progress through the diaries. We have had a couple of volunteers who've specifically picked up on sections of the diaries where it is their first language, and they've looked specifically at the language rather than kind of the full diaries. That's actually one which Marlene has kind of covered, the kind of the Russian that she's recorded. So there's somebody whose first language is Russian. That they've gone through those. That's brilliant. Yeah, again, as we learn more about where different kind of languages are recorded within the diaries, it may be that some of the volunteers with either kind of first language, which is one of those languages, or maybe have other languages as a second language, will be able to help to translate some of those areas. So yes, I think that's going to be kind of a really valuable thing to help to understand some of those particular sections of the diaries.
Thank you. So a follow-up that showed up earlier, but it's connected to translations. This is from Veronika Leshnikova, and she asks, what is the plan for when all diaries are translated? I mean, I suppose it should be something like Transcribe, but let's ask the question connected to languages. Do you plan on translating these, or they will just be available as they are?
It's yeah, I mean, the aim of the project is for the transcriptions to show as they are, but obviously once that is all available in that usable kind of resource, you know, the full transcripts, then obviously it is possible with the potential to for translations of those to other languages. There are a number of books that are already starting to be published in a number of different countries that are kind of translating some of the existing publications and translating those for publication in different countries. So although that's not a kind of an integral part at the moment of the project, then obviously once we've got that information, then it's potentially something that can be done.
All right. So this one comes from Alex Price, and she asks if the West Yorkshire Archive Service would be interested in crowdfunding from these great communities to support spinning up or expanding the transcription projects.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that would be great to look at. I mean, the production of those high quality digital images that we have, I mean, that was funding that came in from externally. It was Sally Wainwright kind of helped to bring that in. It was through Sally that happened. So yes, we'd certainly be interested if if there was other sources of like the crowd sourcing of funds to help with some of those projects. We'd certainly be interested to look at those kind of lines. Yes.
All right, this is actually great news. We have apparently some people interested in this. So more material comes up, which is always a good thing for everyone researching and interested in these people. So let's see. So for our panel of code breakers, this one will be a bit weird because it comes from me. So what do you want to do after the transcription project ends? Are you going to do your own transcriptions of other parts of Anne's diaries, move on to other materials? What do you think is it the next step for you?
I will quite happily crowdfund the letters and then transcribe them. I'm on board already, Dan. Sign me up.
I don't know if it's going to be for me, but Dan, have you considered moving on to the next stage, which will be annotating the diaries? So providing reference within each page to what Anne is writing about. Because this is the sort of thing I have done with other projects I've been working on.
Yeah, ultimately we can look at that kind of additional annotation. Obviously, at the moment, the project is really quite a huge one. So there's a lot still to do on the transcription and to ultimately to make those available on our online catalogue, so they're publicly available for people to read. And but yes, once that stage is complete, then we would look at kind of other stages. That might be travel journals, for instance. It might be kind of looking at things like her letters. But yes, there's also then how do we look at ensuring that they're as accessible and as usable as possible.
Okay, so then this one, is there anything you would like to ask our panel of code breakers?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, first thing I'd like to obviously say again, thank you all for your work that you and your support with the project. It's been brilliant to hear kind of your thoughts and kind of the values that you're getting from doing the project. I guess a kind of a question would be, are there some kind of specific quotes that you found that you either really like or really resonate with you that you can think of?
Okay, go ahead, Jane.
Not a quote, but a word that I've been dying to know whether anybody in England other than Anne Lister has ever used this word. It's my favorite Anne Lister word, agreeableizing. Is that a word you guys use?
No.
No. Well, maybe we do now.
Also, this is an unrelated question, but Dan, is there any thought of doing any forensic or DNA analysis or anything like that that would illuminate whether the various palm prints and fingerprints and whatnot in the diary are Anne Lister's?
We haven't really thought about that specifically. I mean, Shirley, who a few of you have kind of met in the previous talk, is kind of our kind of head of conservation, and she's kind of really knows the documents much better than I do as kind of a physical kind of artifact, as it were. But yeah, that kind of idea is it sounds really interesting. If you've got ink on there as it's drying and you're picking up a fingerprint, then it'd be, yeah, that sounds like quite an incredible kind of a bit of research, doesn't it? But it's not something that we'd thought of or had plans of yet.
Well, make a note of that.
I just say for Jen, I've just checked the Oxford English Dictionary, and the agreeable eyes is not in the Oxford English
Well, it
Dictionary.
needs to be added immediately.
So it is an English
In the world.
Okay, everyone. So does anyone want to answer Dan's question about favorite quotes? We're just almost at the end. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jessica.
I think Steph's in agreement here that certainly my one that resonates with me is I must investigate. And that's definitely Detective Anne is my favourite Anne. She has to know things. And yeah, that's definitely. And we now go, she uses excursionising, which I've never heard of, but we don't go on day trips anymore. We don't go on holidays. No, we go excursionising.
And of course, as a compliment, somebody's always very civil, isn't it? That's the Anne Lister, the height of compliment from Anne Lister, I think.
Yes, and if you are not civil, you are vulgar. So that's like when everyone, when someone asks, what would Anne Lister think about this? My first answer is vulgar, because that's like 90% of the time what happens. So, okay, so any last takers to the favorite quotes? Steph, do you have anyone?
I was going to say I must investigate as well, because in addition to loving Detective Anne, it's so relatable, because with the work that we're doing with the volunteer project, like it turns us into like tiny detectives where, you know, as we've been saying, we start going into rabbit holes, researching all these different things. So I'm partial to that one.
I haven't come across it yet, but I'm loving Detective Anne. Definitely. The only ones that I've sort of come up, well, I'm literally on my first pages, but so far Via it really hopes that wishes that Anne was a bit more blended. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm assuming it's blending into with in company, but yeah, quite strange one. But that's just, yeah. But I really can't wait for Detective Anne.
Awesome. We all love Detective Anne and Dr. Anne and all the Annes in between, and the other people in their diary that do these fun things. So we're closing this session. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dan, for taking the time to do this too. We hope everyone has enjoyed this session, and if you want to stay in touch, here are our contacts. And if you have more questions, please direct them to us. Either on Twitter or other platforms, or use the hashtag Anne Lister Summit to send us more input. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the summit.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye.